Hello and welcome to part 3 of our GameMaker series for beginners. Today we will be creating a character and doing various things with it. We will be finding a sprite, an animated sprite. I will show you how to bring it into GameMaker. We will add variables to the character so we can practice our variables that we talked about last week. And we will add movement to the character. So the first thing is, where can you get this stuff from? So I found a few free sites, such as GameArt2D.com, where you can pick up some really good sprites for characters. You may need to resize them because I found they were quite big. I found some on itch.io, this dinosaur, which I actually will be using, and on opengameart.org, which I've used quite a lot in the past to get a lot of free stuff. So you can go ahead and find your character. And the interesting thing to note about animated characters that you want to pull into GameMaker, and quite a lot of game environments or coding environments that make games, is that the sprites themselves will be a set of frames going horizontally, like this one here. This idle one is made up of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 frames. So there will be an individual sprite for idle, for walk, for run, for jump, and dead. And we'll show you how to bring those in. Another one you might want to look up is the one for SuperTux, and you can actually find all the code and images for SuperTux on a link I'm just going to put right here. And I know that's a very popular game, so the first thing I'm going to show you actually is how to import a couple of images into GameMaker. So first I'm going to launch GameMaker. We want a new game, GameMaker language game. Remember to save your game. You'll probably be saving it in Documents, GameMaker. I have my GameMaker folder here, and I'm going to call it Character. First thing I'm going to do is delete the stuff that I don't need. Okay, great. And the next thing I'm going to do, I want to create an idle sprite for SuperTux. So let's create a sprite. Call it SPR Tux idle. And we are going to, I've already downloaded the images from the link that I showed you. And I am going to import, actually, no I'm not. I'm going to drag in the idle 0 image into the frame box here. And delete that one. So you basically can, if you've got the images, you can literally drag them in. Okay, just make sure they're in the right order. And then you can play. It's going rather fast. So if we took that frame rate down to, I don't know, 10 frames a second, played it again, still fast, 5 frames a second, it's a little bit better. So you can see him blinking. That's his idle state. So that's one way of bringing in a sprite. Another way would be to bring in all the images at once, which is quite an interesting one. So again, you would create your sprite. So we're going to create the dinosaur. I'm actually going to delete this one because I don't need it. And we're going to create another one for the dinosaur that I pulled in from the site I showed you earlier, and we're going to call that SPR Dino Idle, and we are going to import a set of images called Dino Idle strip 4, which contains 4 sprites, 4 images or 4 frames. And the important thing here is the file name must be appended by underscore strip 4. So 4 being the number of frames. So when you open it, GameMaker knows what to do. It creates the 4 frames, and if you run it, that's his idle state, which is a little bit fast. So we take it down to 15 frames a second. Try it again, and that's much better. So I have a few more dinosaur sprites to bring in, which I will do now. That's the move one. That one is the kick one. Again, that's a bit fast. Actually, that's the hurt one, where he gets hit. And one more, I think, is the kick one. Import. Oh, I don't have kick, so I'll do sneak instead. I'll take this down to 15. Okay, that'll do for the moment. Right, so that's how you bring in your images. You can either bring in images one by one, or you can bring in a whole strip of images, or you can create your own images. So let me just show you how to quickly do this. I've shown you before that if you were to do SPR, let's just call it character. Let's call it block, because this will be a block character. Idle. So you edit the image, because you're going to create your own image. So what I've found is that many students are very artistic, so they like to create their own animations, their own characters. You can do this in GameMaker, and it's actually a really good editor for you to do that. Now, me not being artistic at all, I will create a block. So that's my character, and let's say I want the idle animation to be 2 frames. I will, actually, if I copy and paste, there you go, you can copy and paste frame, which is important if you've got characters, because each frame is going to be slightly different to the last one in your animation. So copy and paste is important here. Select the frame that you want to edit and do your edit. So I'm just going to do, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to choose a pen, and I'll choose a square, and I'm just going to do that. and then you can play it. If you can play it here, actually, if you come out or go back, you can then play it like that. That's my idle animation. Not the best, I'll admit, but it gives you the idea of how to do it, right? So you could create your own if you wanted to. So there's 3 ways of creating sprites. So next thing we're going to do is create some variables, because we talked about variables last week. We talked about global variables, which can be accessed from anywhere, any object in the application. And this is, global variables should be associated with data that needs to be accessible to all of the application. We talked about property variables, which are essentially properties of each object. So they are accessible to the object, but the object can be accessible to other parts of the application as well. So you can always get hold of those property variables from elsewhere. And local variables, which are really accessible only to a code block, and they are temporary. They exist only within a code block. Okay, so let's create some global variables. In order to do this, we generally, with every game we create a game object which doesn't have any visual component. So let's create that, and we'll normally call it object_game. Okay, and that, remember to put it into the room. Let's do it straight away. In the corner there, it comes as a question mark because there's no sprite attached to it, and make it persistent down here. Actually, not there. That's the room. If you double click on the object, then make the object persistent. So I was clicking the room down there. Apologies for that. So make the object persistent. That means it'll be created when the room is created, but when you transition to another room, that object will still be alive. It won't die with the first room when the first room is closed. So you'll always have access to stuff, to data within this object. So let's create some variables here. We want to add a create event to our game object, and we want to create some variables. So I'm going to make all of these global so they can be seen. I'm going to call the first one game name, Dino War. I'm going to append my lines with a semicolon. It's not absolutely necessary, but it is good because it shows that the line has ended. We want player score, and I don't use the variable score because that is inbuilt in GameMaker, like this. Because it comes up in green, you know it's inbuilt. I'm going to use my own player score, which obviously is 0 to start off with. I want a backstory because I might display the backstory on the screen before we start playing the game. And notice this string has an at before the double quotes, and that enables me to write this string on multiple lines. I'm actually going to cheat and just paste it in here because it's quite a lot. So that's my backstory, and I'm just going to put in one called motivations because I just want to. I don't know whether I'll use this in the game at all. His motivations are food and mood, but it might come up somewhere in the game. Maybe at the beginning in the introduction or somewhere. So those are my global variables. And if you're wondering what all these yellow triangles are, you hover over them to find out. It says variable game name only referenced once because we haven't used it yet. Once it's used, these will go away. So they're actually quite useful. They tell you what variables have been used. because if you've got a game which has unused variables, you might as well delete them because they're completely useless. Right, so let's create some, let's close this guy, and let's create some for the dinosaur. I just realized I don't actually have an object for my dinosaur, so I'm going to create that now. Remember, a room in GameMaker is full of objects. You need objects to interact with each other, not sprites. Sprites are just images. Images are nothing, they're just images, they do nothing. An object is the actual intelligent thing that's going to interact in your game. An object has data about it, has images about it, it has properties, it can do stuff, it can move, it can collide, it can fire, it can jump, and all that kind of stuff. So we call this obj_dino. You could call it player if you want. I'm going to call it dino. I'm going to give it a sprite. So there's no sprite here, but we're going to give it the idle sprite here. And I'm also going to delete this block idle because I don't need it. Okay, great. So we're getting somewhere. Now we want to create a create event. So when that's created, I'm going to set up some variables. By the way, this button up here, collapse expand dock panels, if you click it, you collapse your docked panels, hence collapse expand dock panels, and you can open them up again like that. So if you want more room, do that. So you can put them on, take them off. I'm taking them off because I'm going to show you what's going on. Now this here, I've told you before, is a comment. Comments actually are prefixed by double /. I'm not 100% sure why there's 3 slashes there. But it's always good to say what you're doing. So I'm going to do this. Create some properties for my player. Comment is not code. Comment is English, or the language you speak, which explains in the language you want to use what is going on in the next bit of code. Comments are good things to put in. In professional coding, we put comments in when we need to, when the code is complicated, because you might be working on this with a teammate and you just don't want to give them a ton of code with no comments because you're not helping them. So put comments into your code when your code is complicated. Like, I don't necessarily need to put one in here because this code is easy, but I'm just doing it to show you. So what shall we have for this guy? So we're going to have name. I want to draw your attention to colors. Now, this color here, it's kind of a lilac purpley. So properties are this color. Variables that are this property, that this color, are property variables within an object, okay? You saw the color of global variables. It was kind of a salmon pink, right? The name global, kind of a reddy, pinky. Yeah, so global variables are different color. And you'll also see that local variables are yellow or orange. My local variable equals 1. That actually turns yellow. It takes a bit of time sometimes. I don't want that. So we're doing properties now. So I want a species. And remember, this is data about your character. Okay, so I have already gone through a data exercise where I have brainstormed with myself everything I want to know about my dinosaur character. So I don't need to think about this. I know what I want in here. Okay. And as we're going to have a bit of movement, actually horizontal movement in a little bit after this actually, we want to give him a horizontal speed. So you could call this horizontal speed equals whatever, and that's going to be 5 pixels. He's going to move 5 pixels every frame of animation, okay? And if we're operating at 60 frames of animation per second, that means he's going to move 60 times 5 equals 300 pixels, probably on my screen about a quarter of my screen, in 1 second. All right. I don't want to call it horizontal speed. I want to call it X speed, because I always think of an XY graph when I'm doing this kind of stuff. And it's probably the way to think about it, really. You know, we've all done maths, graphs in maths at school with X and Y. When I was at school, I remember spending endless hours just drawing lines and curves on graphs. And for what? For this. So XY, X speed equals 5. We don't want Y speed yet, because remember, this is a platformer. So we're essentially going to be going left and right, and we're going to be jumping. So at some point we will have gravity, and we'll have things like, we may have things like acceleration, and we probably will have Y speed, because that's his speed through the air vertically. But we're not going to have that right now. We're just going to move it in one direction, one thing at a time. Okay, so how do I do this? So movement. How about we run the game first, because I've done my usual trick of not putting him in the room. And I also haven't set any background or anything for the room, but it doesn't matter for the moment. So let's just put him in. He's there. He's absolutely tiny. I should probably resize him. In fact, I will. So just running the game, and we'll resize him in a sec. So he's tiny, but you can see him doing idling. That's his idle animation. It's pretty cool. Let's stop it, and let's go to idle. Let's go resize. Let's go. Should we double him? I kind of want to double. I kind of actually want to go 64, 64. That still looks pretty good. So I've resized him 64, 64. So let's run the game again. GameMaker is so good, isn't it? You can do so much stuff. Oh, look at that. That's way better. Fantastic. Right, so let's do some movement. At the moment, if I press my left and right arrow keys, I can do nothing. So let's add a couple of keyboard events. First, we'll close the sprite. We'll open our object again, and we'll add a... I'm going to show you how to do this 2 ways. And depending on how you want to do it, you'll do it one of those 2 ways probably. Now, myself and Kai, we have a slight difference of opinion here. I tend to like the step method. He tends to like the key up and the key down, key pressed methods. So I'm going to show you the way he likes first. So we're going to add a key down left. Now that means for as long as you press, if you press the key down, if you keep it pressed, this event is going to keep firing, like it fires super fast, like, and the code's going to keep on executing. So he's going to keep on moving left for as long as you press the key down. If we chose key pressed, then that's a one-time event. The code will execute just once, and that's it. So he'll just move 5 pixels and that's it. So you'll have to keep pressing it. So it depends on how you want your gameplay to work. You could use key pressed or key down. Let's do key down left. and we're gonna put a little comment that says move Gilroy left. And you know what? This is what we need to do. X equals X minus X speed. And you see X speed comes up as a variable. GameMaker is telling you this is a property variable on this object. So just select it. So we are setting, I'm going to put some spaces in here. You don't need spaces, by the way, because this is a computer program and the computer cares not whether it looks like this, whether it looks like this, because it can work out what's going on. X is a built-in variable because it's green, and X and Y are just coordinates of this object. So you're saying the X coordinate of this object will become the X coordinate minus the X speed, which we know is 5. So let's say he was at 100, I don't know, 100, 100. His X coordinate is 100. If you press the left key, as soon as that key down code executes, he's gone to 100 minus 5, so 95. So he's gone from 100 to 95. So it looks like he's moved on the screen. And let's put in the... Actually, let's just run it. Let's see what's going on. Too much talking. Okay, left. There you go. Now, spot the obvious problems. I'm off screen. I can't move it back because right doesn't work. And obviously he was pointing in the wrong direction. And he wasn't running. He was still idling. Quite a few issues. Let's put in the right one first. So you should be able to do that easily. Just add another event, key down right. So left key, right key. Move Gilroy right, and X equals X minus or plus? Correct, plus, because we want to go right, and positive on an XY graph is towards the right. X speed. So now, let's run it again. And we've got left, we've got right. Fantastic. So we've got movement. Now we just obviously want to make it look a little bit better. So we want to, firstly, let's change his direction. So we have quite a, that's going to be an interesting one. We might need another, I think we'll need another variable if we're going to do it this way. See, this is where I like to do the step way. I like better. But Kai will probably tell me I'm doing it wrong and I should do something else to fix it. But I think we need a player direction. So let's create player direction here. And we'll say player direction equals 0. So direction will essentially be -1, 0, or 1. And it's going to be a bit like this. So 1 is going to be right, -1 left. And 0 is not moving. So when we go left, we're going to have to set our player direction to -1. When we go right, I'm going to have to set it to 1. That looks good. So image scale. Now image X scale will effectively flip the direction left or right. And that's built in again. Anything that you see in this bright green is built into GameMaker. This is not something that we created. So we're saying set the image X scale to -1 here, the player direction, and then set the image direction to 1. Okay. Theoretically, we didn't really even need player direction. We could have just said 1 -1. But I think it's good to have a variable called player direction. Then you can always find out what the direction is. It's a bit better than just playing with numbers. So let's see if that actually works. So that should flip when we're going left, should flip the direction, and that should flip it back when we're going right. So let's run it again. Great. That's great. So now the last thing we need to do here is, before I show you how to do it with a step event, is change the sprite, because we want this one here, right? We want move. We don't want idle. When he's moving, we want move, and when he's back to 0, we want idle. So what we want to do here is this. So sprite index equals SPR dyno move. So let me just type that out for you. Sprite index, again, inbuilt. It's to GameMaker. It says what do you want the actual sprite index to be, and you literally just tell it what the name of your sprite. So I would get SPR underscore, and it comes up with all of my sprites here, you see? Very good. And that's why we name things correctly. If we'd put all random names here, then it wouldn't have found all of these, would it? So we want dyno move, like, not like that, like that. And we want the same thing in here. The only issue with this is to set it back to idle. We may have to do that on a key up event, because there's nowhere we can set it back to idle, is there? Anyway, so when we press the left key, this is what we're going to do. Let's go line by line. We're going to change the X coordinate by the X speed. We're going to set the player direction to -1 and actually flip the image to the player direction. And we're going to change the sprite to the move. Okay. And when we go right, we're going to do exactly the same thing, but in a positive direction, if you like. So let's try it. Now I'm guessing that GameMaker will optimize this a little bit, and if I'm holding my key down, it's not always going to execute all of these, because once we've changed it to move, we don't need to change it to move again, and this code is going to execute many times for as long as we hold the key down. Anyway, let's see what it does. So it did do it, but what didn't I do? Correct. Let's resize dyno move to 64. See, I press this button here, reset the zoom. Actually, no, this button here, center fit. Perfect. And change that to 15. That's pretty good. So let's run it again. Now I've resized it. Actually should work pretty well. Oh, look at that. The only problem is as I said before, we're not changing it back to idle, are we? So it's always moving now. So let's do that. So the only issue with this, Kai, is that I have to do a key up event now. So I've had to do 3 events. Do I really want to do that? Do I? No, I don't. But I'm going to do it. Key up. Oh, I'm sure there's a better way of doing it. Maybe the any key. Oh, it reminds me of Homer Simpson. Have you ever seen the Simpsons sketch with the any key? If you haven't, you have to watch it.
Press any key. Where's the any key? I see ESC, Catarl, and Pigup. There doesn't seem to be any key. Whew. All this computer hacking is making me thirsty. I think I'll order a tab. Oh, no time for that now. The computer's starting.
I'm gonna do this. So key up left. We are going to set the sprite index to SPR Dino idle. Alright, and we're going to do exactly the same for key up right. I don't think I'd do this, but I'm going to do it just to show you how it goes. So now when we run it, and our key, and we lift our finger off the key, that's a key up event. We're back to idle. This is such a good graphic. The only thing I realised about this one is I'm going to have to actually do a jump sprite for this because there wasn't one. And being really, really bad at art, I am bad at it. I'm not looking forward to that. I think I might get someone else to do it for me. Any volunteers, you know, if you want to do a jump one, and then just chuck me the image, I'll be very grateful. Anyway, so it's working, right? And I'm going to show you a different way. So far this way, we've got 4 events, and we've got code that's repeated. This is not good. This is not good at all. So I'm just going to delete all of this stuff here. You know, you can do this if you really want to. So now, I just deleted all that code. If I run it again, look, can't do anything now. So instead of doing that, what we could do is add a step event. Now remember, the step event is our animation event, and the step event runs, as all of the others are too, but the step event is really a special animation event where you can do all of your updates for the game inside the step event every frame and just keep everything in here. So what do we put here? Update state of Dino object. So all of my updates for the object here. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, this is going to execute 60 frames a second, remember. So the first thing I'm going to do is check if we have pressed the left or right key. Now we do this with, I'm going to use a local variable because this variable is only needed in this particular function. It's just to say whether left or right has been pressed. And we use keyboard check. VK left is a constant. See, this says constant. It's a built-in constant to GameMaker. You can pick many keys. Very helpful. So this is saying check if the left key has been not pressed, because pressed is keyboard pressed, check pressed is another thing where it's just one press. This is keyboard check whether the left key is being held down. Alright? I want to do one with right key. Now, just as a coding thing, that's going to help you. Always learn how to do copy and paste don't type everything out, because if you type everything out, you'll make mistakes and they'll slow you down. You have to find them, fix them. Copy and paste. Now, assuming that I haven't made a mistake, which I don't think I have, I'm going to copy and paste this underneath. And I'm going to put right, and I'm going to put right, and there we go. So I've got two checks, the left and the right. Now, in order to work out the direction we're going, do something rather clever. If I put a comment here, subtracting right from left will give us -1, 0, or 1, and that will give us the direction. Okay, so I had player direction already set as a property variable here, so I might as well use that. So I can say player direction bang equals right minus left. Because let's go back to these two here again. When you press down, check VK left, it knows you're pressing it, so it's going to set left to 1. If you're not pressing it, left will be 0. Or sorry, I think left will be -1 or 0. If you're pressing the right key, then right will be 1. If you're not pressing the right key, right will be 0. Okay, and remember, this code is executing 60 times a second. So you can't fool it. Every time you press the key, it's going to catch you. It's going to set left or right. So we have player direction. So now we just need to check the player direction and write an if statement, which we'll be coming to next week. So we're going to say check our direction. If player direction, okay, and here's the thing you might not have seen before. Exclamation mark equals means not equal to, okay? Whereas equals means equal to, that would say if the player direction equals 0. Exclamation mark equals means if player direction does not equal 0, which means that if we have pressed right or left, it's either -1 or 1. So, and that means we're moving. So if we're moving, let's put a little comment here so we know we are moving. What do we want to do? We want to set the sprite index to move, and we want to set the X scale to left or right, so he's facing in the right direction. And we also want to move. Okay, so setting the sprite index to move is super easy. Setting the X scale, we literally just need to set it to the player direction. That's going to be -1 or 1. -1, he's going to flip it left. -1, we're going to flip it right. And then we're going to have to move X. So X, best way to do this, because player direction is -1 or 1, and we want to move either 5 or -5. So let's use the multiplication of -1 to give us a negative, or multiplication of 1 to give us a positive. So we just want to multiply X speed by player direction. So X equals X plus, some brackets, player direction multiplied by X speed. So if X speed is -1, sorry, if player direction is -1, -1 times X speed is -5. So X plus -5 is going to be X minus 5. We're going to go left. If player direction is 1 to the right, 1 times 5 is 5. So X plus 5 is 5 to the right. So that's a nifty little thing there. I like this code. It's a lot. It might look a little more difficult than the last bit of code, with the keyboard events, but it's actually better. It is, seriously. Now we're going to say else, which is kind of like saying if player direction is different to 0, do this, otherwise do something else. Okay, so but instead of otherwise, because that's not an actual bit of code, we put else. So it would be otherwise do this. There you go. Otherwise do this. Instead of that, the actual code is else do this. Now what do we want? We are not moving. So if we're not moving, what do we want to do? Correct. We want to set the sprite index back to idle. And there we go. Now I think that should work. Let's go through it line by line before we run it. Step executes 60 times a second. The first time it executes, we check whether we're holding the left key down. If we are, left is -1. We check whether we're holding the right key down. If we are, right equals 1. Now remember, if you can't fool it, because if you hold both keys down at once, your player direction will be 1 minus... Actually, that might not work. Okay, just ignore what I just said. We'll ignore that for now, and we'll come back to it later. Don't hold them both. Yeah, you're going to do this straight away, but just don't hold them both at once. So we get 1 or -1. Player direction equals right minus left. 1 minus 0 or 0 minus 1. So player direction is either 0 if you're not pressing anything, or it's 1 if we're going right, or it's -1 if we're going left. Now if player direction is different to 0, then we are moving. So we do this. We change the sprite index to move. We change the image scale. Here's a bug. So see, this is in purple. Should be image X scale, which is going to be in green. Image X scale is player direction, left or right, and we change the X coordinate to a positive or negative direction. If we are not moving, we set the sprite index back to idle. So let's run it. Gee, it's a lot of talking. Alrighty, so left, right, left, right, left, right. Let's do this thing then. Set both of them at once. And now it works. There you go. Both of them at once. Because what I was thinking, if I've got both of them at once, then I will have 1 minus -1. Unless I'm wrong, no, I'm not too sure. I think I'd have to debug this, but I'm not going to do that now. I can show you another time. Like you could do it yourself. Like if you did show debug, show message, that will actually come out on the output window down here. So I'm actually going to do it. How should we do this? Let's go left. So you're going to output strings to the output window basically. Plus string left. Oops. And then we can do right. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'm a little bit confused with exactly whether I've got why it wasn't moving. So this is going to debug here. So when we run, see that they're not. We should be able to. Make it bigger. and go back to the output window. Now if I press, watch the output window. If I press left, left is 1. See? If I press right, watch the output window. Right is 1. Left is 1. That's probably why. So I've got 1 minus 1 was 0. So this comment here, not correct. 1 or 0. Perfect. Okay, so that's it. So we've got movement with step, we had movement with keyboard events. I showed you how to import the sprite, get it in 3 different ways, creating your own, importing a strip, or just dragging in each image. I showed you how to alter the frame rate for an object. We showed you how to create globals, create property variables, create local variables. Now look at this. I've used play direction. There's no yellow triangle here. Must have used name as well. Don't recall doing that. Or height. But so that's an interesting one. We obviously used X speed. So we'll leave it there for today and look forward to next time. We'll probably be talking about conditional statements, which we started looking at here. So until then, have fun. We'll see you next time.